Those of you who have been watching these reminiscing videos from the very start may recall that one of the first games that kickstarted this video series was the original Red Dead Redemption. In that video, I had expressed that, contrary to everyone at the time, I did not enjoy the original Red Dead Redemption. I've made it well known that I'm not a fan of the Western time period. I just find it one of the most boring and just gross time periods in American history, and because of my feelings towards that, it was difficult for me to keep playing the original Red Dead Redemption. But upon reflection in that video and a second playthrough in 4K on the Xbox One X at the time, I walked away with a completely different experience, turning my once distaste of the game into pure love and adoration. It was because of this, it defined for me why it's so valuable to replay or revisit your games down the road, because I argued at that time that, like ourselves, the gaming industry changes, and what were once subpar experiences can become unique flourishes, especially in these days of constant remasters, remakes, and sequels. Now, the reason I bring that up is because, just like the original Red Dead Redemption, I did not care for Resistance Fall of Man. In fact, I didn't care for any of the games in the Resistance franchise. These games reviewed generally favorably, and I just couldn't see it. I found these games very formulaic and rather dull in comparison to the other Sony exclusives like Killzone and the Uncharted franchise. I also recall at the time that the only reason I decided to check this game out was by watching Mark from Classic Game Room. His review of this game in 2008 was exciting for me as a previous viewer of his, because he was finally doing reviews of modern releases at that time. But he just raved and loved this game to death, and I just really couldn't see why. Now, nearly 18 years have passed since the release of Resistance Fall of Man, and that time has allowed me to revisit this game and now feel a greater appreciation for it than I ever imagined. What I'm trying to explain here is that I loved my second playthrough of Resistance Fall of Man. What makes this game so great? Well, first of all, this is a PlayStation 3 launch title. At the time, solid PS3 games were slim pickings, and we had been graced with an incredible launch lineup and launch year with the Xbox 360 prior to this. Now, on this channel, I had spent the last several years reviewing all of those launch year games on that system. And this video finally kickstarts the launch of the PS3 for Reminiscing videos. So I'm checking out this console's launch lineup starting today. The first Resistance takes place just after World War II. In fact, World War II never even happened, so there's a sudden outbreak that occurs in Europe, jumping over from the collapse of Russia prior. So as allies, America sends in soldiers to assist Europe with fighting this outbreak. Upon arriving, you are swarmed with mutant beasts and insects, and long story short, there's essentially an alien invasion that occurs. As Nathan Hale, an American soldier, you fight your way through the invasion but become infected soon after the game begins. However, you don't change, you're not altered in any way, so you carry on with increased senses and fighting power, and as a result, you act as a turning point for the war in Europe. It's an okay plot. Like the first time I played it, what's fun is getting to fight through a lot of the monuments and historical back alleys of England. So you get this different location to explore, and in a different time period than what you may find in other games. The real joy here, though, is the gameplay. As I said before, time has done wonders for this game. It plays like a classic run-and-gunner. This isn't a cover shooter with intense firefights. This is an all-out, action-focused first-person shooter where you just hold down the fire button and strafe your way across the battlefield. Playing a game like this in this climate of so many games just looking to either cash in or mimic better games in its class, it feels so refreshing. It's just all-out chaos, and you have different levels of enemies, swarms of them, that just help make a lot of these fights feel so intense. I got straight into 2006 gaming mode here and played this on an OG PS3 and EO1 model with a 6-axis controller, and just had the time of my life moving from level to level, shooting anything that moved. Greatly underappreciated back then when this game came out, launch titles notoriously don't ever get recalled as being good games. They often simply act as tech demos. But Resistance here stands out today as being a style of shooter that simply doesn't get made anymore. And as a result, you can jump into this game with ease and feel so much joy and tension firing your way out of hell. The weapons also add to the fun, as you'll start off with basic rifles and shotguns and then progress into the more alien weaponry. Insomniac channels Ratchet and Clank here with different styling, as you have a plethora of guns at your disposal to help you get through fights. The levels also start to progressively get more alien the more you play through the game. You'll find yourself in trench warfare, moving to urban firefights, and then eventually on the alien mothership, just blasting your way through swarms. The frame rate stays steady as well at 30 frames per second, but what Insomniac has done here with the controls is really reduce the latency between button inputs, so the game feels extremely responsive to play regardless of the frame rate target. It just plays like a dream. It plays so well today. It plays so different from anything released today that I challenge anyone who enjoys story-driven action shooters to give this a go. If you weren't a fan before, like myself, you may become one now. And of course, you guys know what time it is. Let's take a look at the box art for Resistance Fall of Man on the PlayStation 3. Love the classic logo here for the PS3 on the left side. And it's a cool cover. I like the skull idea with the soldier's helmet. Cool look at the spine there. On the back, we have a couple of details, kind of sets up the premise and stuff, some game screenshots and whatnot. So pretty cool. Let's take a look inside. So we got some nice details here. The Blu-ray disc, of course, in exceptional condition, I might add. And so we get a nice clean disc there. And then we got some nice details as well. So we have a nice manual here that's full in color. And it's a pretty decent size, you know. It's not too large, not too small either, but has details about controls, details about the game screen, the different HUD elements, multiplayer, and sort of, all that different information. So I think it's a pretty decent sized manual. I like the styling of it, trying to kind of mimic a notebook, I guess, from the 40s. Kind of like a journal, a war journal. So it's pretty cool. All the different characters and details there, and limited warranty and all that bull crap. And I also have a cool ad here for PlayStation Underground, the Play Beyond stuff. So you were meant to mail this in, and I guess Sony would send you certain details, might be a magazine subscription or something like that. I remember I had a PlayStation magazine subscription from this time period, but I don't think I used that. And some nice, back cover art there. It's nice that they include that, with the PlayStation 3. That was something that was started with this generation. You have this back cover art, and that later did transition to the 360, although not quite as effectively because those cases are green. But, oh well, nice look. Now we need to talk about the graphics for Resistance Fall of Man. As a PlayStation 3 launch title, the expectations were quite high. Sony at the time was touting the gaming experience on the PS3 as being so realistic that it didn't even matter that the Xbox 360 launched a year prior. I believe Kaz Hirai's exact quote was, "The generation doesn't start until we say it does." Now, Resistance here is an impressive visual game. I think I have this sort of unique perspective because, as all you know, I've been playing these games from the 7th generation in release date order, which is why you haven't seen the PS3 launch titles covered until now. So after playing games like Just Cause, Oblivion, Dead Rising, Condemned, Gears of War, and so on and so forth, I think Resistance fits comfortably alongside those titles and is one of the more visually impressive games we've seen to this date. However, the difference isn't massive. I think it's comparable to those other games I mentioned, but I do notice that this game tends to have much better looking character rendering than what we saw with those other games. Like, there's just better facial detail and animation here. Nathan looks pretty realistic, I suppose, so you don't get this sort of cross-generation or heavy stylized look that you got with those other games I mentioned. But the details extend also beyond the scope of the characters. And I was firing at the Chimera, and if you stop and pay attention, bullets that hit their armor actually will affect details and physics relating to its velocity and location. So for example, I killed a Chimera and begun examining its body, and if you continue to fire at it, the tubes that inject themselves onto its back and front armor plates will actually jostle with realistic physics. It's a simple detail, but yes, as bullets whiz by and they move in varying degrees, you'll actually see their armor physicalized on their bodies, given the illusion that it's truly a separate piece and that the tubes are attached to their backs. It's subtle stuff like this that sort of gives you the impression of a next generation visual experience. And they also have a lot of enemies on screen as well sometimes. The swarms in particular, sometimes it just feels like hundreds are coming out at you, and it's like you have to run from like face huggers in Alien. It's great. But I think it's an overall attractive game that does have some nice nuanced details and good looking characters. It's just not so far and beyond anything that we saw on the Xbox 360. Now, musically, I feel this is sort of a miss. There's very subtle themes here. In fact, for large chunks of gameplay, you'll be walking through these levels and there's no music whatsoever. I think Insomniac was probably trying to play off of the game's atmosphere and at the time kind of give you a sense of horror with this game, but there's really no theme here for Resistance or one that sort of makes itself known. Sound design, on the other hand, is very good. I love the way the Chimera sound. They have this gravelly roar when they die, and you can easily hear that reflected back in their voices. The gun sounds are also decent. There's good bass with high explosions and such. And overall, the sound profile for this game is pretty good. We have to keep in mind that Sony at the time with the PlayStation 3 was touting full uncompressed PCM 7.1 audio, which I do not have a 7.1 sound system, but playing it through on modern soundbars today, I did think that the game sounded pretty good with good bass response and good separation with channel detail. So Resistance Fall of Man was an okay game made great by age. Seriously, this game is a ton of fun, and I'm so happy I was able to finally enjoy it. And again, it just cements the fact that games are worth replaying for this very reason. If you don't have the original Resistance, it's super cheap these days, provided you do have a PS3, but I highly recommend a revisit if you do. You may find yourself equally as surprised as I was when playing this. So let me know what you guys all think, and I hope you have an awesome day. Thank you all for watching.